Not Titles podcast is brought to you by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
I want to just say welcome, everyone. We're so glad. My name is Steve Kempf, and I'm the Senior Vice President at Land Trust Title Services. And we thought it would be great to do a little bit of a Title 101, which is just kind of explain some of the basics of title. And some of the basics may not be so basic to a lot of you. The second thing is that we want to do is we're really honored and I'll introduce them to have our panelist attorneys here to join us to give their expertise on some of these things and how they relate to the marketplace. And then we're going to talk about something that is really like real time, something that every agent should be have on their radar, which is a seller impersonation fraud. This is happening more and more, and we want to make you aware of some of the tricks and schemes that are going on out there. And then we're going to finish with a couple of tools that Land Trust has that might be able to help you position yourself differently in the marketplace. And as an agent, I know with a tight market and with a lot of competition, it's really important for you to, number one, arm yourself with knowledge, and number two, have a few tools where you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace. And so, without further ado, let's get in and we'll do the introductions first off. And I just want to say that we have a really fantastic panel today, which our first is Diana Mendoza Pacheco, who is the owner of Mendoza Pacheco Law. And then we have Josephine Hamill, otherwise known as Joey, who's with DKMO in Arlington Heights, and then Tom Anselmo and John Brennick, who's with Diaz Anselmo and Associates. What I'd like to do, just briefly, is if I could have Diana and then Joey and then Tom and John just give a little bit of an introduction, talk about your firm a little bit, how long you've been in the business, and then we'll incorporate you in as we go. So let's start with Diana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. I've been practicing for 16 years now, but my own, I decided to go on my own at least about going on 11 years at this point. It was funny because I did not anticipate my firm being predominantly real estate. That's just how it worked out, and I loved it. I actually thought, well, let me try real estate while I get my practice going, and then I ended up truly enjoying it. And fast forward now 11 years later, and it's a very, very important part of my practice. But yeah, when I started off, it was 2008, right? And there was hardly any real estate going on at that point, because everybody remembers here what happened in 2008. But lo and behold, I've seen it all. I've seen down from the lows all the way up to the craziness that COVID brought us. And yeah, fun times.
Well, Diana, thanks. And another aspect of your firm is that you do speak Spanish as well, right? So there's a whole another segment of people that you can help. And we just thank you for your partnership and thank you for your time here today.
Thank you. Likewise, Stephen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Joey, why don't you introduce yourself and your firm as well? Thank you for being on here.
Thanks for having me. So our main office is in Arlington Heights, but we have a few satellite offices. And so our firm has been around since the 80s, since the mid 80s. We have a couple of different branches. So we do estate planning, probate, trust administration, corporate, commercial real estate, and then residential real estate. And I practice in residential real estate and estate planning. And I've been practicing now for about 13 years. Previously, I was in litigation, and I came out in 2011 when the foreclosures and modifications and everything were at an all-time high, and I did that for years. So I've had my hand in real estate and mortgages and everything for years now. And then I made the transition to the residential real estate and estate planning a few years ago, and I love it. You don't have a bad day when you're able to help people achieve their dreams. And I'm enjoying meeting new people, and I hope to be able to contribute a bit.
Great. Thank you very much, Joey. We appreciate you. And let's go to Tom. Tom, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your partnership as well. And so please just give us a little bit about your firm and
Sure.
you.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you for including our firm, and to the other panelists and to the participants. So our firm's been in existence since 1980. I've been practicing 44 years and been a partner since 1986. We concentrate on my side of the practice mostly in real estate, both residential and commercial, and estate planning. John does most of the estate planning. We also, our other side of the practice, because I heard Diana and Joey both say they started getting in real estate with all the foreclosures back in 2009 and then 2011. Our other part of the firm is we do foreclosure work and creditors' rights. So that includes bankruptcies, workouts, loss mitigation for the lenders. And for that part of the practice, we are in 7 states. But my main concentration is on the real estate. Our main office is in Naperville, and then we also have an office in Oak Brook and then in Chicago, and we do all of Cook County and all of the Collier County. So
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom.
thank you for
Appreciate
having
that.
us.
Yeah. So, and I just wanted to say for to everyone, I see people still piling into the to our the webinar. For some reason, the chat feature is not working. So use the Q&A if you have questions. We do want this to be kind of conversational in some ways. And so we'll be incorporating as we go along all of our panelists. Well, today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is title insurance, why you need it, what is the role of a title company, what's the role of a real estate attorney, what do I need to be aware of today, in particularly with seller impersonation fraud and land fraud. A lot of times as agents, we look at it and say, well, the title company has this, my attorney has this, or whatever. What we're seeing is that agents can be dragged into this very quickly. So you are not separate from different fraud activity. And so your choice of attorney and your choice of title company is one means of protecting you in this. And so we'll talk and just knowledge and awareness of what's happening in the marketplace. And then we're going to talk just briefly about how can I build and grow my business. Just a couple of things. You agents are the experts. I love real estate agents from the standpoint that they're so resourceful. They're very passionate about their self-improvement, their sales skills, their market knowledge, and all those different things. So we don't pretend to know more than you in that regard. However, we do deal with a lot of different real estate agents and find here's some things that work and here's some things that don't. And hopefully we can share that today in that regard. So let's get into what is title insurance. So first off, title insurance is a policy that protects your client against loss due to defects in title from events that happened in the past that weren't discovered at the time of the sale. And we'll get into what those things are, but it's not homeowners insurance that you pay for regularly and that protects you against various things that are happening with your property, whether it be loss damages and things like that from, storms or floods or whatever it is. With title insurance, the premium is paid up front one time and is not annual. So that kind of puts it in perspective. A lot of people say, oh, wow, why does title insurance a little pricey, right? But the title insurance actually protects you for the lifetime that you're owning the home. And so it's not collecting for a lifetime, but it does protect you for that time. And it covers the buyer as long as they remain at home from any past claims, which is what we just talked about. So why do you need it? It protects you from risks that happened in the past. And so let's talk to Diana about this. Diana, we talk about another owner who has interest in title. Can you just talk about what kind of scenarios could happen where someone comes up out of the weeds and says, hey, I also own that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, I mean, It's possible that that happens. Everyone tries to avoid it. That's what the whole purpose of title insurance is. But surprise, you have somebody challenging your ownership right. The beauty of having title insurance is you need to go ahead and have the company then assist you with that. But what mechanisms can happen? For example, we might need to go ahead and quiet title, which is a process by which you go to the court and have someone declare, a judge declare essentially that yes, you are the rightful owner. Various ways by which can happen. I mean, these scenarios can occur if there were heirs in the, background that didn't get notice of certain proceedings. Maybe a certain foreclosure happens and somebody is saying, hey, you know what, they didn't follow the process correctly. There is a wide range of factors that can give rise to that. Whatever gave rise to it is the mechanism essentially that you're going to have to go ahead and use to be able to quiet title and declare yourself the owner. Yeah.
So Diana, have you ever had it come up where the home has been sold and then someone came up and said, I have a right to it?
Oh, for me, luckily, no, I have not had
Okay.
an issue
That's
happen.
fantastic.
Yes.
Well,
no.
that's a great testimony for you. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Let's talk about liens on the house, either present or future. And Tom, I want to talk about bring you into this. What kind of risks are there on the lien side of things that could come up out of the woodwork?
The biggest one that we see is a past mortgage, not necessarily from the owner seller, but the person who they may have bought from. Most of the time, the mortgages are paid off at the closing because that seller owner got title insurance when they purchased, but no release was filed, and so that mortgage is still of record. So you have to work then on getting a release deed from the previous lender and then take that and record it at your closing. There could be past taxes where people haven't been paying their taxes and taxes have been sold. Condominium associations always have an ongoing lien against the property, whether it's recorded or not. You have to get the paid assessment letters to cure that. Sometimes people have judgments entered against them. They may not even be aware of it. So you have to get a payoff letter from the creditor or the creditor's attorneys. There could be IRS liens or state of Illinois liens against the property. And again, you have to get a payoff letter in order to give the new buyer title. With the sold taxes, it's done by statute. I'm not going to get into that, but it takes about 2 to 2.5 years if somebody has purchased the taxes to get a final tax deed. And that's very statutory. And you see it once in a while in somebody just didn't pay their taxes. Usually the lender will be paying taxes, or if they're not, they're at least following up every year to make sure those taxes are paid. But the thing with unpaid taxes, and if they go to a sale and the tax buyer eventually gets a tax deed, that owner, that they become the owner and they wipe everybody out, including a lender. The only thing they don't wipe out is past real estate taxes.
Interesting. Well, that's great. And if anyone has any, I do see a question here. So Joey, we have a question here that says, if a homeowner refinances, does the title insurance remain with the policy or with the homeowner, or does a new title insurance kick in?
Sorry, I don't see that question, but so
yeah, it is. When you refinance, does the title insurance carry over or the new title insurance kick in?
Then I believe it's the new title insurance that kicks in. That's
I know,
why
it's like, holy mackerel, it's like a game show. Yeah, it is yeah, absolutely. It is the new title insurance. And that's part of the work. Even though an attorney is not involved in a refinance, that's part of the work of the title insurance company. Is after everyone does all their work, the title insurance company then takes on the risk of something falling through the cracks. So we're talking about what could fall through the cracks and why you have title insurance and what the attorney is doing. during that time that you're, going to contract and going to close, they're making sure that nothing does come out of the weeds on behalf of all of the parties, including and then the insurance company is saying, yes, we're good with that. We're satisfied. We're going to close that. And then they take on the risk.
Steve, can I just say something real quick on that?
Absolutely. Yep.
The way I'm understanding the question, yes, there's a new title policy on the refi, but that's for the lender only. The
Mhm.
owner got their title insurance policy when they purchased the home, and that carries all the way through. They don't need a new policy because they're still entitled. Now, if something shows up on the refinance, like a judgment or another type of lien, then they're going to say to the owner, before we can close on the refi, you have to clean this up.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So Rosa has a question. What about when properties are purchased at auction? Can we have title insurance prior to buying there? I see, Diana, you answered in the chat, but why don't we just elaborate on that just a little bit, if you don't mind, Diana?
No, not at all. So yes, I have had clients that submit their bids and are successful in securing an auction property. You just have to give us a little bit of leeway, right, to secure title. That's what it is. Please don't pick a close date that's like 4 days out. But for the most part, even then, sometimes we can we're the right people, so we can get this done. But yes, you do want to secure title. Generally, auction properties will sometimes offer their own title companies, but they truly don't care. Again, it varies from company to company and how they structure it. But generally, you can have your buyer select their title company, and as long as you close escrow within the time period that they allow, they generally do not care if you do or do not get title insurance. But always strongly suggest to get title insurance, especially for auction properties.
100%.
So
And
can
Tom-
I just ask,
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
to clarify,
Yep.
is the question, do they bid at the sheriff's sale or at the auction? Or does it get on the market and they're buying an REO in the regular process with the listing agent and the buyer's agent?
I think this was a bid. I think this was a bid question.
Okay, so if it's
This
a
was a
bid
sheriff's
question
sale.
and they outbid, the lender's always going to bid in what they have coming.
Right.
If they outbid the lender, they get that property right away. They have to put down the balance of the purchase price within, usually it's 24 hours. And then they have to go back to court and get the sale approved by the court. And Diana's firm probably does that, goes back into court and represents the successful bidder and gets the sale approved.
Correct.
But there's no title insurance given at that point in time, because technically even the bidder doesn't own the property until the court gives the order approving that sale.
In that situation, yes, absolutely. But there's other bids, for example, where you have a company, I can't remember, there's various structured companies, right? Where you can go
Yes.
ahead and successfully secure a bid. Now, this is not at the sheriff's deed level, right? It is still an auction property, but not at sheriff's deed level. At that point, you can go ahead and secure your bid, but close with title.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so we have we have kind of two questions that are, I believe, the same thing. And it is about the seller's protection, the lender's protection. And we want to make a clear, and Joey, I'll have you handle kind of the difference between the seller's protection and the lender's protection, if you don't mind. And then we'll address the seller's protection and how it does or doesn't continue on through the sale. Please, Joey.
So the seller's protection would be making sure that if there's any prior liens, that they can provide clear and marketable title at closing. That's the biggest thing, is they need to be able to provide that. So if there's any judgments, like you said earlier, that they didn't even know about, we want to make sure that those are cleared so they don't follow them. If they have common names, that's not uncommon that, they have to file a personal information affidavit to make sure that we can clear those. So that way, when we get to the closing table, we don't have to bring anything additional, that those are paid off or those are cleared. And then for the lenders want to make sure that they maintain the priority. They want to make sure that when they have an interest in the property, they want to make sure that they're number one, if they were to have to proceed to foreclosure, or they want to make sure that their interest is also protected, since they have skin in the game, which is that mortgage.
Yeah, and to be clear, someone is asking about if someone has sellers or doesn't have a title insurance policy and they're selling, that's irrelevant in the you know, you get a new policy for that
Right.
transaction.
Exactly.
So it's not like a policy that transfers to the next owner or anything like that. And I know you were clear on that, but I saw that was an additional question in the chat. And so
Okay.
hopefully that takes care of that. Okay, so Tom, I don't know, did you address mechanics liens at all?
I did not.
Okay, would you mind just talking about mechanics liens for a
No.
moment and when they're particularly applicable, kind of on these fixer-uppers or, you know, new construction, things like that?
So if it's governed by the mechanics lien statute. It's very specific. You have to follow the statute, but basically what it does is it gives the contractor the right to record a lien against the property if the contractor hasn't been paid, and the subcontractor can also file a lien against the property. The title company is going to want to make sure that there's no liens filed within 6 months prior to the closing, or that at least that if there was work done, you can obtain a waiver from the contractor or the subcontractor showing that the work was done, present it to the title company, and then that protects the buyer and allows the seller to go ahead and move forward. If there is a dispute, a lot of times the title companies will put money in escrow until that dispute can be resolved. Usually it's double the amount of the lien. And what that does then, it allows the seller to close, get their money except for what's at dispute, and it protects the buyer and the lender so the deal can proceed. And the buyer and the lender are insured regarding the title. And if something can't be resolved, or if there's a claim made down the line, the buyer and the lender are both protected.
Yeah, and Tom, give an example just quickly of what would a dispute be?
Okay, I hired an electrician to come in. We had all the specifications. The electrician came in and said I had to do all this extra work. There was no document signed for the extras to be done. Or, you know, a dispute that, hey, you didn't do this correctly. Now I had to have somebody come in, do it correctly, and I'm not paying you the balance that's due.
Yeah, so there's an outstanding bill. It becomes common knowledge now. There's an outstanding bill. I don't want to pay it. This guy wants to collect it, and now they're saying, "Hey, you guys settle it on your own, but we're going to hold some money until this is settled, so that the
Right.
seller or the buyer is not going to be stuck with the bill because some lien shows up."
Right. And you know, under the act, the contractor has to file its lien within a certain period. It's 90 days from the last day of work, and or 4 months, I'm sorry. The subcontractor has to do 90 days. And if those are filed on the property, you have to have a waiver. Sometimes, you know, it doesn't pop up until after the closing. If the closing's done, the title company's on the hook. Now, they may have an action against the seller because the seller signed a document saying they haven't done any work in the last 6 months or had any work done, but that happens sometimes too. The buyer doesn't get stuck though, because the buyer didn't have notice, because it wasn't raised on the title, because it wasn't recorded, and the title company would have no way of knowing either. So in that situation, you have a bona fide buyer and you keep on going on. Then the disputes between the title company, the seller, and the contract.
Great, and that is particularly the seller is particularly culpable if they've committed fraud, they knew about it, and they lied about it, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And
Okay,
it does
great.
happen, you know, so.
Yeah, it does happen. And that's a lot of times why when there's fresh work being done, a lot of the antenna go up and people start asking those kind of questions, is to protect the people that are coming into the home and make sure the seller is protected as well and everything's out in the open. Joey and Diana, anything you want to add to that, or did we cover that pretty good?
I think the explanation was great. I just, you know, I wanted to our agents, obviously our audience here are the agents. I think you have all been in situations where appraisal raises issues and repairs need to be done. And then when you get to the question of who's going to do it, the seller doesn't want to do it, can the buyer do? This is the reason why we're so apprehensive to allow a buyer to do work on a property that is not quite theirs. You have all of these potential lien, who gets paid, who pays when, you know, what happens if they don't pay? It's not their house and this doesn't close. And now we have a seller with lien issues. And so again, this is this particular topic is one of the reasons that we don't want anybody to touch a property that's not theirs.
And be more clear and don't want anyone to touch a property that's not theirs. So
Okay.
give a scenario.
So, you know, you have foundation issues raised on an appraisal, and someone
Right.
needs to go ahead and do some foundation repair work in order to get this property to close, okay? And the seller says, well, this is an as-is property. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to put any money into it. I told you that's just not happening. The buyer truly wants this property because they feel like they're getting a deal, and they say, that's fine. It's okay. You know what? I will go ahead and I will pay to get this, you know, I'll get my contractor out there. I will fix it for you, okay? Because I just want this deal to truly move forward.
Right,
Well,
yeah, and so the buyer is saying the lender's say, you know, needing that fix before it closes, right? And
correct.
so the
Before
buyer
it
is saying, I got it.
we cannot do an escrow. So the lender says, no, you can't escrow. You can't do anything. In order to get this loan, you must go ahead and get this fixed. So
I
you
see.
have a buyer that says, I'm willing to put money into it. Just, you know,
Let's
just
get
let
the
me
deal
in.
done.
Let me in, get it done. And that's when you might get some pushback, and then us attorneys have to try to fix a situation so that both sides are protected and we don't have lien issues. You know, we're all trying to get to the finish line, but there are issues. And the reality is, even if we were to fix this foundation, okay, let's just go with my scenario. You fix the foundation. What happens if this still doesn't close because another issue pops up, some condition that we can't clear down the line, right? So, you know,
That's great.
when us attorneys raise these issues, it's not just because we're trying to complicate a deal. There's usually a reason behind it, a very specific reason. So
I love it. Joey, you're smiling.
Agreed. It doesn't even have to be an appraisal issue. With the market being what it is now and properties being as is, buyers want these properties and are willing to, well, I really want it done before I move in. So I'll have it done. I'll just pay to get it done before we close, you know, so that way the house is ready to go when I walk in, you know, when we close. And we always say, no, you don't want to, because what if something happens at closing and you can't close? Are you really going to want to pay this? I mean, they're going to have to, but if they don't, then that's the seller's issue. So I'm definitely with Diane on that. We do not like having the buyers do any work prior to closing until the property is theirs.
Okay, so if you're representing the seller though, do you like the buyer doing the work or no? Does that create problems on that end? Maybe talk just about that for a moment.
For the same situation, I don't like having the buyer come in to do any property because we just don't know what could happen. And even with pre-possession, if something were to happen to people's property, buyer's property, because they come into the property early and there's a storm and something were to happen, we try to be risk averse. And
Yes.
so again, we try to make it where both parties are whole when we get to the closing table. And so it's a smooth closing. That's always our goal. And so we don't try to invite the potential for any trouble.
Yeah. And, you know, and there's this tension, right, of all these agents who are working so hard for every transaction. They're just dying to make the deal go until you see it go bad, right? Like in Diana's scenario where they have the foundation, right? So the buyer brings some guy in and then he starts fixing a foundation and the whole wall collapses. Now what, right? Or
Exactly.
what, you know, and there's 1,000 different ways to Sunday that I'm sure that you've seen, you know, you've learned through the experience. Okay, we're going to move forward on this, but you get the idea of, you know, some of the nuances of it. So one of the other things that title insurance protects you against is improperly handled or recorded documents. Maybe I'll toss this to Tom. Tom, what are some of those things that can happen here that title insurance protects a buyer or a seller from?
Okay, so if something shows up on the title and it becomes an issue for the seller and or the buyer, you know, I review those documents, as I'm sure Joey and Diana do too. sometimes it was recorded improperly. Sometimes there was a bad legal description on it. Sometimes there's a wrong tax identification number. That's where sometimes you see somebody says, hey, I own this property. Why is it showing up in Jack Jones' name? Guess what? It was recorded way back when by into the wrong on the wrong property. You know, it's a wild deed. It's out of conveyance. So you have to work with the title company then. I'll normally record the deed, not record the deed, I'm sorry, review the deed, see what I think the defects are, and then go to the title company and say, hey, I think this is a wild deed. This shouldn't even be being raised.
Right.
Okay. Or if a judgment's on there for too long, you know, judgment's only good for 7 years. Technically, you can revive for another 7 and another 7. So if a judgment's recorded against the property and it's over 21 years, they should automatically take that off. It shouldn't be being raised as a lien against the property. But those are few and far in between.
Right.
Most of the time, title company does a great job of getting everything correct, but sometimes you just have some things that pop up that shouldn't pop up.
Awesome. Thank you. And then we have encroachments. And Joey, why don't you just talk about what kind of encroachments could happen that a title insurance company or title insurance protects you against?
So encroachments into easements
Mhm.
that as long as they're movable, fences, anything that's affixed, so like a concrete slab, it wouldn't be protecting against. So it doesn't ever hurt to ask to see if they'll offer the protection. But more often than not, they can't.
Yeah.
The easements are through the utility company. So, I mean, if it's
Right.
been there for 15 or 20 years and it's been fine, we tell clients I wouldn't worry too much about it. Usually doesn't make or break the deal anyways, but it's just something to have on their radar so they don't go and do it in the future or, you know, anything like that.
Good. Thank you. And then, of course, it protects against fraud. And we'll get into a little bit more about fraud in a moment. But who provides title insurance? And we'll just kind of buzz through this aspect of it because I think we got really a lot of meat on what title insurance protects you against. In Illinois, does the seller's obligation provide the buyer with an owner's title insurance policy? The seller pays the premium for the policy based on the purchase price. And a company like Land Trust provides the policy to the buyer. And Land Trust does partner with all the major underwriters who provide the financial backing of the policy and defend a claim. And it is customary for the seller's attorney to place the title order on behalf of the seller. And one of the reasons we love to have our attorneys on this panel is because we are super champions of the attorney agency program. And we really believe that attorneys make the real estate transaction so much better. There's many states where attorneys are not involved. And a lot of these things that were spoken of by Tom, Joey, and Diana are having to be tackled by somebody else. And so I think that Chicagoland real estate really benefits from having legal minds. Yes, Tom. I see you have your hand raised.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Oh, I
must
thought
have
maybe
hit
you're
the
just high-fiving me. Okay.
I was
But
looking at the
anyway,
questions. So.
yeah. So it is. So I'm going to put Tom's hand down.
I should.
I'm going to lower hand. Okay. Okay, so in-depth knowledge and experience, and you can see here from just the things we were covering, how much the three of them know about real estate and how having someone as a resource like Tom, Joey, or Diana in your pocket can really, raise your expertise level. They also do contract review and negotiation, which right now is more important than ever. And so they can identify potential issues, make sure the contract terms protect your interest, all those kind of things. And obviously we talked about title insurance and search issues, closing assistance. And, Tom was talking about how, attending closings and being there for buyers and sellers is so critical today because there's a lot of moving parts. And
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
and then risk mitigation. So a lot of times people, I'll hear real estate sellers, they let this attorney piece of it get away, where the seller might go, yeah, my cousin Vinny got me out of a traffic court scenario, and so I'm going to throw him a bone and have him do some real estate. That maybe worked 25 years ago or 20 years ago, or maybe even 15 years ago. But now it is absolutely critical that the attorneys that you're using in this marketplace are primarily focused on real estate. And so maybe just, I'll have Diana just talk about that a little bit, because Diana, you probably have experience where you're dealing with opposing counsel and they're in traffic court, or they're doing something else, or they're in another state even, and this just becomes difficult to do a transaction.
I think that the biggest issue is those who dabble occasionally, maybe a few times a year in real estate, but primarily their roles are in other areas, is that they don't understand necessarily how to resolve a problem when it pops up, and assist in getting the transaction to the finish line, right? I wish I could get, there's everybody has their own style. Every attorney can either be a little bit more transactional or a little bit more litigation focused, right? And I think your experience kind of colors your approach to each contract, which is fine. But regardless of whether someone's background is in litigation or transaction, if you are not familiar with how to resolve certain issues that pop up, an attorney might be more inclined to maybe suggest to their client that they cancel a deal rather than offer solutions on how we can resolve this. I'm trying to think if I have an example off the top of my head from a recent transaction. We had I was on the buy side, not on the sales side. We had an old vacated alleyway that was not there. It was vacated because the way that it was created, it was a private alleyway serving the entire block, right? So all of the houses backed up to each other. They created in the 1910, I think it was, this private alleyway. Well, eventually the neighbors did away with that alleyway. And they decided to all build the garages there. Okay, that's fine. They all had front driveways now, and no need for that alleyway. No one formally did anything about it, but now you have a whole bunch of garages sitting on a alleyway, according to public record. So at this point, all I need is an endorsement from title, ensuring, we're talking about encroachments, we talked about that earlier, ensuring my garage, so that in the event someone got crazy, which I doubt that would ever happen, it's been sitting there for over 50 years, some judge gets crazy and says you need to knock down your garage. All right, well, now we have title to defend us, right? So I just need some kind of endorsement to give my buyer that protection. The seller was not experienced enough, was not pushing their title company the way that they should to pay attention to this file and get this resolved. I had to essentially then, as an attorney, put on a someone else's hat on and assist them in that, in getting the endorsement through, getting underwriting who is just not paying attention to the file, to get them to do. Of course, this was not land trust, by the way, not land trust at all. That would never happen there. But that title company was not paying attention. We had to wait there for several hours because the other attorney simply did not know what to do in this situation. They did not know how to speak up. So all of this to say, if you don't hire an attorney who does this, who is very familiar with not only how to explain a document, because that's not really what we're here for. That's a very important part, but it truly is how to solve these issues, how to resolve these questions that we don't know may pop up at any given time. That's where going with, your cousin who got you out of your DUI, cannot help you with a transaction. So, yeah.
Yeah. And believe me, what I found out for the most part is your cousin who got you out of a DUI doesn't want to do your real estate deal, but is afraid to say no, because what are they going to tell you? Listen, I'm good at DUIs. I'm not good at real estate. They're just going to go, okay. And then they're going to go back to the book about after you leave their office and go, how do I do this now? What are we doing with real estate? So, and I'm sure Tom and Joe, you guys have a lot of examples of that. So the long and short of it is, when you have a valued partner, you have peace of mind. And, I love to talk about, when do you choose an attorney partner? Now. One of the great things about, some of you guys might be Bulls fans, and for some of you younger folks, this is Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, legendary basketball players. But, one of the things is that they won 6 championships together. And what Michael and Scottie would say is, when I'm running down the floor, I knew exactly where Scottie was. And when Scottie would say, when I'm running down the floor, I knew exactly where Michael was. And one of the keys to having a real estate attorney partner that you trust is that they know the cadence of how you communicate, they understand your style of business, and they are, when your sellers and buyers feel like, wow, you're walking in lockstep, as opposed to trying to handle a new relationship during a 30 or 45-day transaction and trying to figure everyone out. So I think, as a title company, we are really advocates that each real estate agent find 1 or 2 really quality attorneys and build a partnership with them and make them a real part of your team and of your process. And so we talk about, part of your team are experts. Clients prefer that clients, by the way, they do prefer that the broker lead the transaction. So when they do say the DUI or the traffic attorney or whatever it is, say, no, listen, it is really critical that we use a real estate attorney because of this scenario and that scenario. And now you've heard some scenarios. We're recording these. There are things like encroachments. There are things that are going to pop up, that you want to have an absolute person that is involved in real estate daily right now. You want to have them as a part of it. And my person that I'm referring to you is someone who does this, and this, and that's why I choose them. I just want to say, your clients, as agents, your clients are really looking for you to be the leader there. Then we have the synergy, we have expertise, and they understand the way you do business and really help you. I love one of our partners said that, help you get to the closing table. The example that Diana just gave was that, hey, we know that both sides want to get this deal done. We have a buyer, we have a seller. Seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy. Let's help them achieve the goal together. As opposed to, there's a lot of attorneys that'll just say, oh, well, I don't know why it didn't come together, but stuff happens and we'll just try it again next time. And meanwhile, you have all the marketing as a listing agent, you have all the effort as a buyer's agent that you put into it, that's all gone. And I think that for Joey, Tom, and Diana, they understand the pain that you go through to get a client and the value of the client. And their goal is to make sure that the deal gets done, so long as everyone's safe through the transaction. So anyway, the best time to refer your attorney, really, we talk about that the best time to refer your attorney is immediately at the listing presentation. And at least plant the seed that I have my team of partners. But maybe I'll have Joey talk about, Joey, what's the best way for an agent to be able to introduce you into the transaction?
So oftentimes I get an email with my broker and then the clients on it, and then I can take it away from there. And then I reach out to the clients. If they prefer a phone call, I introduce myself, I introduce my team, so my assistants. And then I just let them know, we are always communicating. We're always available. If I'm not available, then so-and-so is available. So, because I always tell people, this is going to be the biggest purchase you're probably going to make. And I want to make sure that they're comfortable and that, we can be there to help with any concerns or questions that they may have. So, but usually it's at the outset when the offer is being made. We do have a lot of clients that call in that were referred to us by their brokers earlier on, and they might not have a contract, but they like knowing that, okay, so when my offer is accepted, I can go ahead and send it to you. And I'm like, yep. And then they send it right away.
Thank you. Tom, anything to add to that? You're on mute, Tom.
Yeah. No, every what's ever really comfortable for the broker. I'm going to probably say I get most of my referrals once the contract is signed.
Okay.
Some people want to talk to an attorney though before they sign a contract or before they start going out, knowing they're going to have somebody that they can, confer with, what have you. But I agree with what Joey's saying.
Excellent. And when you're referring an attorney, a lot of times people just say, oh, here's my attorney, right? Or here's this. And if you're not giving, as an agent, if you're not giving a compelling reason why you're using your attorney, I would start doing that, because then what happens is people start Googling and this and that. Next thing you know, the transaction gets away from you and you're working with an attorney that you're not familiar with, as opposed to saying, hey, my attorney has market expertise and responsiveness, great with this kind of property or that kind of property or these kind of situations or this area. Give those sellers or buyers something to grab onto where they go, oh yeah, okay, that's why, this agent is endorsing them. So I always say that if you want them to use your partner, give them a strong endorsement and use a few adjectives. And the only way you can get those adjectives is by meeting with your attorney partners and finding out what makes them tick and saying, wow, that really resonates with the experience that I want my client to have, right? Because you could hand off your transaction to an attorney, and then the rest of the time of the experience does not reflect what you would like to deliver for your customer. So it's really important that you have that synergy and resonation with your partner. So I want to get into now, we're gonna shift. I understand we have 12 minutes, so I'm gonna really now zoom, no pun intended, zoom through this. So there's a few things. We all know about wire fraud, right? And so we are continuously monitoring new scams, rapid response plans, we have secure website, wiring instructions, we have closing lock, which I'll mention to you. We have a fully trained staff on wire fraud. And the rapid response piece of it is really important, that we've seen all the tricks, we've seen all the scams. But one of the things that is coming up more often than ever is we have a Q&A. Okay, Rosa, sorry. Maybe just curious in opinion of this. Can you elaborate on those title companies that are now having real estate brokers being the ones referring our clients to the title company and being compensated instead of the attorneys? Okay, so I will talk about, I'm sure I know Tom, Joey, and Diana's opinion on this. But so first off, I'll just say this. You heard Tom, you heard Joey, and you heard Diana. And now we have, and I understand John is with us as well. So John, how you doing? Good to see you. Sorry, I missed you. And John Brennick, who's a partner with Tom. So you heard their expertise, and trust me, we haven't heard from John, but he's a pretty smart guy too. You've heard their expertise, and I would say they have a level of expertise that extends beyond agents, because their area of business and the area that they're built to protect is different than the agent's area and built to protect, right? They're not out there hunting for deals. They're not out there, figuring out neighborhoods and all these kind of things. They're working on the legal aspects of the transaction. So the first thing is just common sense that says, I am now taking an area of expertise and for money, dipping my toe in it, hoping that it all goes well. And I just think, so first off, that's a bad formula. Our position is Land Trust does not do a transaction in the Chicagoland area that does not include an attorney, agent, partner doing their job on the transaction. And we have taken a position with Main Street and others, just talking about the extreme liability that agents are putting themselves under with this, by taking this on, unbeknownst to them, and how sellers and buyers are worse off for it. So that's kind of the Land Trust title position. But John, maybe I'll have you speak to it, the hot topic here. So please, why don't you, John, just chip in on your insights on that?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us today.
Yes.
So here's my thought. If you have a buyer and you are buying from a seller, and the seller's agent is going to act as the title agent and order title. The title agent in that situation, the broker is not, they're not going to be looking at trying to clear as many exceptions on title as they can. And when your attorney for your buyer is looking at the title commitment and says, well, what about this exception of coverage? And what about this issue? There's going to be friction. There's going to be headbutting on that. It is going to make the transaction more difficult, and it is going to potentially compromise your buyer client. Do they want this deal to go forward, taking on additional risk? So I agree with you, Steve. It doesn't aid or benefit the transactions going forward. It doesn't aid or benefit title insurance. There should be attorneys on both sides of the transaction. The seller side should have an attorney that can order title, try to clear title, and give good title to a buyer. And the buyer's attorney should be reviewing it to make sure that their client has the most amount of coverage that they can possibly have.
Yeah, thank you, John. And they say, why is it being allowed and that kind of thing? I believe that that there's some appeal because of the shrinking of the market. There's some appeal to the revenue that's happening on the title side, but that revenue is designed for effort, to compensate for effort, to compensate for expertise, and to compensate for risk. And if you don't have expertise, if you aren't putting in the effort, and if you are not able to understand the risk to mitigate it for your clients, you're really kind of, you're kind of working your way into compensation that is, maybe unjustly earned in that way.
Well-
And what I will say is this, that we've seen a lot of agents in the marketplace. I haven't seen many top producing agents that are attracted by this because they're too busy trying to do the job for their buyers and sellers and helping them find homes and helping them sell their homes and leaving the work to the experts. Now, there are going to be some that, go ahead, John.
If I can add, if you decide, hey, as a broker, I want to take this on, I have now additional source of revenue. Understand, you're also taking on all the risk that comes with
Absolutely.
either improperly handling the order, improperly handling clearing title issues, if you are in fact working with the title company. So you are taking on a tremendous amount of responsibility with that. It's not just.
And I will say there are E&O issues. There's a lot of different issues that are that are a part of this equation. So
That's exactly, I mean, insurance is a product, right? So why are they allowing it? Well, because it's a product that is being sold on to consumers, but who underwrites, who truly looks at that? Who's making these decisions? Who's analyzing these searches? Who's doing the work to clear these things? It's up to the consumer, I think, at this point, and the consumer is being assisted by their attorneys and by their agents to be able to say, yeah, no, I don't necessarily want a product that is being given to me where the person who's making these decisions and these calls and might not exactly know what they're doing, right? So I truly truly don't think that it's good for anybody involved, including the agents. I just don't think the agents that are involved in being title agents here, I don't believe they truly understand the depth of liability that they're opening themselves up to. So.
Yeah, and I do see, there is an aggressive campaign by one company right now to do that, but my personal opinion is that it is going to be more of a fad than a trend. That we're not going to see agents that are going to go into that area of business and to try to get that. I just don't think it's going to be something that is going to hold and stick. So I think you're hearing a lot of the chatter out there, but from my view of the market, the closings are not happening. So there's a lot of talk about it, but the closings aren't happening on that side. So, okay,
So
that's
Steve,
all we want to, yes?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Tom.
This could be a whole topic just for.
Absolutely, and I think it probably should.
And so there's so much going on, but let me just tell you, I don't think this is going away anytime soon. I think there's title companies out there going to the broker owners and saying, hey, we want your office to be part of this. We want you to push it through to your agents. And there's a lot of pressure then on the agents to use the title company. And some of the agents are getting some things. I know there's going to be pushback there already is, from some of the bar associations or attorney associations And, you know, they're talking about legislation too on licensing the
Yes.
agent if they're going to be a title agent and
Yeah.
what qualifications are going to be. So
Yeah.
I honestly believe this is here to stay for a while because there's money involved. And when there's
Yeah.
money involved, and everybody wants to make a dollar, you know, so
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
just to add, if you have a deal where you have the buyer client and the seller side's doing it, that should raise certain red flags. You should have a good attorney that you're working with your buyer to make sure that your buyer is covered.
Thank you, John. Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the seller impersonation fraud as we wrap up. So a couple of things. Here are the red flags. Here are the things to watch for right now. The property is vacant, land or non-owner occupied property. These are big targets for the fraudsters right now, whether it be investment, vacation, or rental. The property is unencumbered by mortgage or liens. Why is that important? So that there can be full profit if it's sold and don't have to pay off any banks. The seller is willing to list the property below market value. We're hearing this every day. The agents are like, oh my gosh, pennies from heaven. Someone called me. I'm such a guru. My marketing is kicking in. All this kind of thing. It's very flattering. And a lot of times we don't want to mess it up by, asking the prospect too many questions like, why are you using me, right? Why would you ever ask somebody, why are you wanting to use me, right? The seller wants a quick sale on a cash buyer. The seller refuses to meet in person. The seller only wants to communicate by email or text, and the seller wants to use their own notary. So just really quick, Joey, have you guys seen any of this at all?
No, luckily we have not, but after we did the CLE with your office last week, we talked about it. And I think with anything that we have any concerns over, we are going to encourage and probably require that they do their pre-sign in person or via video or something in order to try to eliminate any concerns that we have.
Great. Does anyone, Diana or John or Tom, do you guys have any experience with this just recently?
I haven't, luckily I have not seen it. I have heard of other attorneys definitely going through something like this and, catching it, luckily. But I was extremely cautious on one deal, and it was not a seller impersonation issue, but it had a lot of these red flags. And one of my requirements was this was my client, this was the seller, right? But we had not met in person. She was not available. All of this was going on. So I made it quite clear that we had to do the pre-signing in person at the title company. And if she was not able to get there, then I wanted it to be e-notarized, because there is this element when you do e-notarization where essentially it's like almost like a credit back. You have to know, you truly have to know, various personal details about the person that you say you are, in order to get even to the level where you're notarizing in front of that e-notary. So there's a certain level of protection there for everyone involved. Luckily, again, I was abundantly cautious, and I was very happy, and I would do it all over again. You need to protect everyone involved. But for my client, it was just, I did not know this person. I was introduced to them by the agent. The property was vacant land, no mortgage on there. It was a very quick sale that they wanted to do. All of these red flags were there. So it was a genuine transaction. Everything went well. My client was very happy. But yeah, you have to sometimes be comfortable enough to make uncomfortable decisions.
Yeah, and Diana, when you're protecting yourself, you're protecting the agent that is your partner in this, because if something were to happen and that was a fraudster, the agent would be dragged into this and get tangled up as well. So bravo to you.
Thank you.
Tom or John, do you guys have anything you want to add to that at all?
No, I mean, it hasn't happened to us, but I did talk to an attorney It was at the title company when it was that happened, and the buyer got scammed and so did the title company.
Yeah, and so what happens in that case, because the buyer ultimately is made whole, but if you can imagine buying vacant land, the seller not knowing it, everyone being all excited, then the buyer goes gets a builder and starts building a home, and then the seller comes back into Chicago because they live in Florida to drive past their property, and they see a house going up on it, and they all of a sudden say, wait a second, that's my property. Ultimately, the seller will get that property again back, and the buyer will have to be made whole. Yeah, oh, that's a good point too. Rosa says the reason attorneys are not seeing it because they say they do not want other attorneys involved. So they only want their attorney and provide a flat fee to the broker and blah, 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 want to be quick. Yeah, so you got to watch out for that. Okay. If you believe here's just one final thing on this, that, if you believe someone is, good, someone's a fraudster, you can let your managing broker know, your leader, or if you're a managing broker, you can just let your attorney know that I believe there's something fishy with this transaction. And that way your attorney is able to take some steps, legal steps, to make sure. By the way, we've seen that the people are now using fake IDs, and they're willing to meet you in person with their fake IDs and even get this notarized. If possible, you can contact the true owner at a mailing address or email address or phone number that is publicly verifiable, just to make sure it's them. If Land Trust is doing the transaction, we have actually two things that we do. And one of them is we have a seller verification. If you're working with us with an email and a phone number, we're able to verify the identity of the seller. And that is just a very simple process. And I don't want to get into how that can happen, but just know you can reach out to one of our reps and they will help you with that kind of verification. So seller impersonation fraud, be aware of it. And a lot of times there are a lot of perfectly legitimate out-of-state sellers that want to use your services because you're great and because you're popular. And we want to make sure those transactions happen. But we also want to make sure that we catch those that are trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. So just understand that. So there's three things I wanted you to be aware of in terms of what Land Trust does to partner with agents like you. And one of them is we have a seller net sheet. I'm not going to go through the seller net sheet, but just know that we will get you information on the seller net sheet as a follow-up to this, where this allows you to get within minutes, allows you to get to the net. It allows you to have a buyer's estimate. It allows you on the buyer's estimate to also put in your commissions so that you can now present that in a professional way. So if you're interested in the seller net sheet, just respond back to our follow-up email. We also hold earnest money. If you're with a firm, brokerage firm that you don't hold earnest money, Land Trust will hold earnest money for you. And also another way to work around wasting your time in the marketplace on sellers that don't own the property is we do something called the property lookup, where we're able to do a quick review of title to get you the owner of record and to get you the mortgages on title. So if you have a listing presentation where you're wondering someone's deceased, does this person really own it or whatever it is, you can also get property lookups and get information about the property. This is very helpful on many fronts. Okay, finally, I want to just cite our Land Trust team. We have Tony Zielinski, our VP of Sales, Carmen Carbonera, our Director of Sales, Denise Hellstrom, our Senior Account Exec, and Anya Pouliot, our Executive Account Manager. And so these are your resources in the field. And I want to thank all of them for bringing in our partner attorneys. I know we ran 5 minutes overtime, but with such great guests, it's hard to not do that. And so I just want to say, for Tom and John, I want to say thank you very much for being a part of our panel today and just adding a lot of color to our conversation. So Tom and John, thank you. I want to say to Diana, thank you very much. for attending with us and adding your expertise, and also for Joey. Joey, thank you very much for bringing your expertise and knowledge to the table. So, hey, good selling out. Yes, Tom, were you going to say something?
I was. I mean, thank you for putting all this together and including us. I know we're past the time, but if some people have questions and want us
Yeah,
to stay
that's a
on,
great
I have no
idea.
problem. I
Yeah,
don't know
does
about
anyone
the,
have
I
any
don't want to
questions
speak
on
for
seller
everyone.
fraud? Do they have questions? Thank you for a great overview. Oh, yeah, I love it. And listen, we'll also include the contact information of all of our panel for you as a follow-up. So if you have a question or you have a specific transaction, you just want to brainstorm with them. If you want to meet them for a cup of coffee and find out what are they about, and is this someone that's going to be a fit for me in my process? I would strongly recommend that you do that. So, Diana, thank you. Joey, thank you. Tom and John, thank you very much. And
Thanks,
everyone
Steve.
have a great day and good selling.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Land Trust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.